Welcome to Be Bold Branding. Today, we're interviewing one of my all-time favorite people, whom I have the pleasure of working with side by side for a couple of years. His story is quite impressive. He's a successful serial entrepreneur, an award-winning CEO, a highly recognizable and trusted personal brand, and an author, a philanthropist, and those are just a few of his day jobs, guys. He's also the co-author of BrandFace for Home Improvement Professionals. I'm Tanya Eberhardt, founder of BrandFace, where we help business owners and entrepreneurs differentiate themselves, and we do that through personal branding.
Hi guys, I'm Michael Carr. I'm the COO of BrandFace. I was actually a client before I became a partner in the company, and we're the only comprehensive personal brand building system across the globe. We do Be Bold branding to help you take the fear out of putting yourself out there in business in case you have any hesitations of doing that. And this is a man we're going to introduce you to that has no qualms about doing that. In fact, that's the reason he wrote a book on it. We'd like to welcome Ron Greenbaum, the basement doctor, to the show. Hi, Ron.
Well, great to see you. And I love the name Be Bold. You know, if you're not bold, then, go home.
Why bother?
That's right.
Absolutely.
We're going to quote that.
Yep.
Be bold or go home. I love it. I love it. So Ron, why don't you start out, I love this story, by telling everyone how you became known as the basement doctor.
Well, Tanya, that is a great story. And, as usual, I stole it. No, actually,
No, you
I
didn't.
wasn't happy at all with the name of my company. It was called J&D Hydrotech or J&D Waterproofing. We were in the waterproofing business, but it really wasn't a name I could build on. So I was on the way to a home and garden show for one of my other companies from Columbus, Ohio to Pittsburgh. And I looked up at a billboard and there was a sign that said the house doctor. And I said, I could work with something like that. I'm kind of, the basement doctor, and found out that it was available. And as they say, the rest is history. And kind of over the years, actually in a fairly short period of time, it kind of all came together. And of course, with your help, it really came together.
Well, I've got to say, Ron is super generous. He actually had an amazing brand before we met. He was very well known in the community. And it's one of the reasons that I actually wanted to meet with him. And I'll never forget, Ron, you telling me when we met that you said, look, my house is dirty. I just need you to come clean it up. And what you meant was your brand just had some loose ends. It just needed to be kind of cleaned up and pulled together. So.
And you certainly did that in an amazing way. And I think that's why, again, it didn't take we worked together for a number of years because I have a number of companies. And after you worked on the basement doctor, you really helped me with the distribution end, and some of the e-commerce that we're involved today kind of evolved from that. But it was great. And, writing the book, which you obviously were instrumental in that. I just kind of tagged along. I think Michael can testify to the fact we all tag along with your great talent. And
I would agree 100%.
You guys are sweethearts.
But well, no, seriously, as you know, I'm a fairly hard taskmaster at times, and but with you, it was a matter of you always, and I'm saying this because it's 100% true. You always over delivered, and that made it easy and fun to work with you.
Yeah, I second that. I would agree. And it actually, I want to ask you about that because you knew Tanya long before I met her. And you were actually a lot of the reason why I decided when she asked me to work with her on a book. I'm like, okay, well, if Ron trusts her and stuff, I could see the size of your companies. I looked you up long before you and I actually got the pleasure of meeting. So tell me, and the rest of the audience, why did you decide to work with Tanya? Like, was there a certain reason after you met her? Like, how did that come to fruition?
Well, I had certain things, like she said, I felt that I had a good brand. I didn't think it was great. And, I test people a little bit. The first email she sent, and I've told this story many times, but she sent me an email because she was going to interview me for a video for a company that she was working for, a major media company. And she sent me over some questions. She said, I'm going to come out and film you, and here's some questions. And I sent her back an email. I'm pretty direct. I said, well, that's great, but these are the wrong questions, and here are the right ones. And
You did.
and she took it really well. Some people might get really insulted by that. Instead, she sent me back a very positive and say, well, thank you so much. And showed up, and immediately I knew that it was somebody that really understood what branding was about, understood what I wanted to accomplish. And one of the things I wanted was a brand audit. I wanted somebody to be brutally honest with me. And I felt I could get that from Tanya. And she was. And it wasn't real brutal because, again, I thought, I had a pretty successful brand, but, there were some major issues with my logo and some other things. And she honed in on that immediately. And where a lot of people may have gotten their feelings hurt and said, well, I want to, they become very territorial. I loved it because I thought that was the major thing wrong, was I just did not have a logo conducive to print or if you saw it from a distance. I mean, it served its purpose, but after she got her hands on it and really updated it and told me what we needed to do, it was a no-brainer.
Well, it did kind of, one of the things that you shared with me then was that you wanted a brand that could just outlive you, right? You wanted a brand that could live forever, that didn't age. You wanted an image for your logo that just didn't age. And you had always been that face of the business, face of the brand, and your photograph was in the previous logo. And so all we really did was take that photograph and draw a likeness, which actually I love to say, Ron is the Dick Clark of the home improvement contractors. He never ages. He always looks the same. This is going to look like you for many years, Ron. It looks just like you. And it allowed us to kind of pull everything in, allow that image that everybody was so used to in the community to still be seen, and then have a brand, have a logo that could literally be read 4 cars back. And that was really important. And then I remember the day we decided on a tagline for the company as well. And you, at the time, you said, we fix basements, we can fix everything, we do all of this stuff, and then we even finish basements. And then ding, all of a sudden, it's like from fixed to finished.
Right. And that it was when you brought all that in, it was so perfect. It was like, wow. I think you gave me like 2 or 3 different line, drawings initially, but there was one that stood out a little bit, and the tagline was there. And, it was the beginning of you worked with all my people, which was great. It was hard. It's hard for a company. At the time, I was probably 20-some-year-old company, 25, 26 years old. And some of the people, my marketing director had been with me almost the entire time. And, I had a business partner for one of the companies, and so people were like, well, why do we need her to come in? We're doing fine. And I said, no, we're not. And then after a very short period of time, everybody was like, when is she coming back? Because we really they loved everything that you did. Because you were easy to work with, and you again, when we didn't have to wait for everything, and that's what you have sometimes when you're working with people, is you're waiting for things forever, and nobody likes that. Today, I was just on a podcast last week, a few days ago, called Get It Done. And one of the reasons I agreed to get on it was because of the name. Sure. And I think I may have even mentioned that to you. And this gentleman is a young man who's getting it done himself, and he right now he owns 3 companies, and he wants to develop some e-commerce and things like that. But again, he's smart enough to realize, I'm basically, and what you were a shortcut to success, and that's what your business is. Your business today is anybody that wants to become the face of their brand and market the right way. You're a shortcut. And to get a shortcut like that, an expert, the 2 of you, I know you've really helped a lot of realtors, I think in 40 some states, and that's pretty obvious. But as your business acumen, I mean, I'm not in the real, I am sort of in the real estate business because I own a lot of property, but that isn't my business. But in terms of actual business acumen, you have a wealth, both the two of you have just a wealth of experience, and you just make it easy for people. And that's what you're in business. That's what I think I'm in business to do when people contract with us. And I know that
Sure.
got to make it easy.
I agree with that 100%.
Yeah. And you know what I love most about working with both of you is that as good is not ever good enough, right? You're always looking to improve, always looking for the next thing, the next trend, the next being ahead of the curve. And it keeps you on your toes when you're somebody like me, right? And I love that. I thrive on it.
I thought it was we were both so good looking.
That too. That's the first thing.
That
and then the
has
second,
to be a part of it.
That's right.
I aspired to look like Michael, I mean.
Hey, exactly. I didn't have a beard when she first started working. I saw Ron's beard. I'm like, I got to get a beard.
That's awesome. I love you guys. So I have another question for you. Like,
Sure.
Just since we've been working together, your business has just grown and grown and grown, and not just the Basement Doctor, but obviously you started Nash Distribution, Greenbaum Steyer's marketing group, several other spin-off businesses. So what we want to know, what everybody listening to us wants to know, is tell us some of those bold moves you made to get to where you are today, because you don't get there by sitting still.
You must get yourself involved with the right people. That's the key. I mean, people always say, well, how do you keep all this together? And, I'm operationally irrelevant. I work at none of my businesses. I'm a true CEO. I believe in, I handle the wealth part of it. I make sure that people don't make really, as much as I can, that they don't make real stupid mistakes that could get us sued or cost us a whole bunch of money. And then, I'm in the legacy part of my life, so I'm involved with a lot of. I have a foundation and do things like that. But by being involved with you put people in charge, you give them a job, you tell them what you want to accomplish, you set goals, and then you let them. As I say in one of the books I read, you throw them in the deep end, you see if they can swim, and you have a life preserver ready. So, if you're micromanaging your business then you have the wrong people. That's not to say again, I don't chop people's heads off for making a mistake. If they're dishonest, that's something else. But
right.
It isn't about me so much as the concept, when I was very young, and I don't know if you remember this or not, Tanya, but when I was about 8 or 9 years old, I won a citywide chess championship in the city of Cleveland, where I grew up.
Do you remember?
And it was a big deal. And my grandmother put this big article in the newspaper about me. They called me the next time because Einstein, I think that way. I try to think what's the end game? What's the checkmate? Where are we at on these companies? What do I want to accomplish? You set a program, a 5-year plan, a 3-year plan. Today, sometimes it's a 1-quarter plan, depending on where you're at. You plant some seeds, you water them, and you grow these businesses. And if something doesn't grow to a certain period, then you either sell it or you close it. That's what I learned. And I'm in love with my family. I don't necessarily fall in love with every one of the businesses to the point where I'm afraid to close it up or not do it. But I've been fortunate because I have been very good at getting involved with people.
That's great advice. I hope everybody's listening. This is really good advice from a CEO that has grown multiple businesses to very big sizes. Like this is really, if you could boil it down, Ron, to one thing to help other entrepreneurs grow their business, would it still be that, or would you add to that? What would it be? What's the one thing?
That it costs money to have a business.
Right.
Most people start out. They either have a bad or there's multiple things you have to look at. What is the name? I do some speaking and I do some consulting work, and the first thing I do is look at the name of a company. When you have a company called BrandFace or the Basement Doctor, or Nash Distribution, you know immediately what they do. They have something to do with the face of your brand. They have something to do with waterproofing or basement finishing or something like that. Distribution, you may not necessarily, but we always have a tagline: Nash Construct, distribution for the construction industry or whatever. I have a company called My DIY Center, and the logo has a hammer and a screwdriver in it. And so I'm a big believer that especially if you have a brick and mortar place, if somebody's driving by your business, if they glance over and they're driving 50 miles an hour, they should immediately know what your business is doing, because otherwise it costs you a lot of money. You have to keep telling people all the time what you do, as opposed to having it there in your face. So I think it's important to have a name, and I think it's important to have some money.
Yep. And not be afraid to put that out. That sort of goes back to that bold moves. You gotta, once you have that right, you gotta put it out there. And that does cost money at times. But if you do it right, it brings back so much more.
Michael, there's an old story about three gas stations back in the day when gas stations had mechanics, and they were all on the same four corners, but there were three gas stations. Two of them did pretty well, and one went out of business, despite the fact that the third one had absolutely the best mechanic. So you say, well, why did that happen? Well, he didn't put a sign up. So, you got to tell people. I mean,
got to tell them what you do.
You got to tell people that what you do, and there's nothing wrong saying I'm the best mechanic in your sign. You just better be the best mechanic.
That's right.
Yep. And it's not always the best brand that wins, it's the best promoted brand that wins.
Absolutely.
Goes hand in hand with what you just said. Okay, so if you could be more bold, as if there is such a thing for Ron Greenbaum to be more bold, if you could be more bold about any part of your life, either professionally or personally, what would that be, and how would you change it?
I would want to be a celebrity chef.
I love it.
Want to be bold enough to do that. And I have an industrial kitchen now, and I have been practicing on my family and friends, and they've been enjoying my food. And so, somebody asked me one time, if you weren't the Basement Doctor, what would you be? And that, if celebrity chefs had been around 40 years ago, at the level they are today, I may have gone down that direction. So in terms of being bold, I am pretty bold in my other businesses. And, I'm not afraid to pick up the phone and call the governor of Ohio, or about something if I'm displeased, or pick up the phone and pretty much talk to anybody. I've been fortunate in my life, and I'm a big sports fan. I've met some pretty famous sports people and gone to probably the best Super Bowls and college games there are, baseball, things like that. So that's been something. My wife loves heavy metal, rock and roll, and so for our 30th wedding anniversary, I got her backstage. She could meet Ozzy. We both met Ozzy Osbourne, which was somebody she loved. So, I'm a pretty bold guy, but that's what I think. I'm still on the fence about that, but I may put myself out there as a chef.
I love that.
You should totally do it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You should. And I hope what everybody's picking up right here is here's a very successful guy who never stops thinking about something else he might do, some other challenge he might take on to conquer. And I think that's something innate in a successful person. Because to me, it speaks to what you said earlier about, like, when you try things, you'll try things boldly. And if they don't work out, they don't work out. That's just a numbers game, right? And you'll either scrap it, sell it, change it, tweak it, fix it, get rid of it. Like, none of that is seen as any kind of failure. It's not a failure at all. It's a wise person making wise decisions about how the economy is working at this time, filling gaps and doing it boldly.
Well, failure happens and it's all relative. I have a friend that
very relative
that lost $560 million here last year on a something he tried. He got into the marijuana industry and went public with a company, and he closed it up. And inside of a year and a half, it was just not a good fit for him. But for him, $516 million didn't really mean that much.
Right.
That's hard to imagine, isn't it? But
Right.
it's true. Yeah, right. It's
all
just a number game. It's just a number
It
game.
is. It is. It's just, it's just a number of zeros. But, we were watching a podcast from Gary Vaynerchuk not long ago. And Gary said, look, you got to understand in life, there's always problems. Right now, I'm looking at my phone. And as soon as I get off this podcast, I got 8 problems to fix. He said, right. But life goes on. And that's how you grow a business.
That's the job. The job, people asked me back when I was really in operations, to me, it was like driving a big, ship through a strait or whatever. And then water's here, the water's there. And, you try not to hit the rocks and things like that. But you're going to have to keep your hand. Sometimes you can let it just keep going. And sometimes you got to grab the wheel again. Mm-hmm. The other thing, and I've given sales meetings, I talk about, if you're in a kayak, you're going to turn over. Question is, how quickly are you going to turn back over, or are you going to die?
Right.
You're going to figure it out. So that's business. Business is challenges. There is no business that's straight up and down. I try not to have more than a bad quarter. I used to get upset if we had a bad month. Then I realized really I have to look at my businesses more quarterly. Right. Now I'm at a point where I can look at some yearly and say, you know what? So I lost money in that. Believe it or not, I mean, a lot of people lose money, but the question is, do you correct things? Are you in a burn? A lot of people don't understand what burn means when it comes to business. And that is, when you start a business, you're just throwing money just like logs on a fire. It's burning and burning and burning. Amazon is a perfect example of that. They were for years and years and years until they got out of the burn. And once they got out of the burn, they started just making more money than any company in the world. And I kind of look at it the same way. When does the burn end? Sometimes if you don't throw that last log of money on the fire, you have wasted all of your efforts and energy. So that's what you learn when you have a great beard like this, that you're not always right, but you do learn things.
For sure.
It's a wisdom beard, right?
Yeah, you have to be willing. I hawked a car one time to get $10,000 to buy vending machines. And I think I sold about $423 worth of stuff through those vending machines. So but I learned a valuable lesson. It wasn't just about vending machines. It was about a lot of to do with business, who I was dealing with, salesmanship ability. So the education was far greater than the loss in that. And I just rolled it into something else. Then I had a fence company, and I took those lessons and I moved on with them. And,
you can't cry over spilt milk.
Right.
You guys are in the real estate world. I sold a house last year that I just got Zillow email this morning that the house is now worth $250,000 more than I sold it for in less than a year, 6 months later, but I'm not crying over it. I sold it. I moved on.
Yep.
And it's the way it is.
Absolutely. And you taught me another lesson at one of our meetings years back. You may remember it, but I said, okay, so, when you're building a sales force or, and a company is going to grow and other people effectively are taking that banner and running with you, what do you suggest, and what's your piece of advice? And you said, well, you have to build a system where people can be successful in that system. And
right.
And I think that's very, very smart, because that goes back to what you said earlier about, you're not micromanaging people. You're hiring the right people to go out there and trusting that they're doing the job. And of course, obviously overlooking that to teach and help be the guardrails, but they have to be successful inside the system that you create.
I'm glad you said that, Michael, because systems are important. Brands are important too. Obviously, brands are very valuable, very important, but you can have the best brand you in the world, but if you don't have good systems in place, it could put you out of business, or it could hurt you. And sales systems, marketing systems. I always take a systems approach to business, and I hire people that also work within a system. When we hire people, A, we hire honest people. B, we hire people smart enough to do what we hire them for. We hire people that can train themselves, because while you put training out, people really have to be able to absorb the training and train themselves. And we've learned this. And then and there's two more things. We've added, I used to have those three things, and now we talk about, can they work within our system? That's a super, super important thing. And then we also want good communicators. That was the fourth. That's something we just really added, was people that are, because if you're a good communicator, you have to build relationships. Life is about relationships. Business is about relationships. It's about trust, and it's about earning that trust. So you have, in my opinion, if you have the right kind of formula, I mean, you could be wrong, but most of the time you get the right person or hired if you have a criteria that you use to hire those people.
Right. And a lot of times your brand actually dictates those things.
Oh, I believe that. Definitely.
It sets the tone and direction, for like what you want to be known for, the culture that you're building. Obviously, the brand is a culture, and and you're attracting those people to your culture, and those people will innately fit inside your system if your brand is set correctly to attract the right people.
Agreed.
And I learned a lot of that through working with you.
We've kind of adopted something here in the last 2 to 3 years too. And that is our goal. We have the same goal for every business now, and that is to be the most trusted brand in whatever business we're in. That's our goal every time. We want to become, because with that, we don't say we want to be the biggest, the best. We want to build that trust. So therefore, when we hire people, we tell them that. That's what our whole, it's all about being the most trusted brand in whatever industry we're in. And it's helped our success.
Well, you've been doing that for a long time, and the man dictates the brand, which is why it's called BrandFace, right? Man or woman, those are, female CEOs, entrepreneurs out there. The person dictates what the brand and the culture, is known for. So, okay, Ron, how can prospects reach you? Prospects or anybody who wants to find out about how to do, about you, your companies and so forth. How can they learn more?
Very simple. RonGreenbaum.com.
Yep. RonGreenbaum.com.
Get on there. It's all there, and we're loading it every week with more and more content for whatever podcast. If somebody wants, like I said, I was on a really great one, I thought, here last week, and I believe they're putting that on. Also, I have, I think, 160 YouTubes out there under Ron Greenbaum or The Basement Doctor, some of which you were involved with. But RonGreenbaum.com gets to all the companies, all the different consulting or anything somebody might want.
It's the hub.
Absolutely.
It's the hub. All right.
I love that.
Ron, thank you so much for joining us. I've meant to do this. We have meant to get together like this for a long time. And thank goodness it finally happened, because, I'm so grateful to have had the opportunity to work with you. We didn't even get to share all of our story today, but maybe you'll be kind enough to come back on again sometime.
Sure. You guys are great. And if anybody wants to create a brand face in any industry, in any business, in anything they do, you folks are the people to talk to, because you absolutely have helped my brand. And again, I think we're a pretty mature brand, but you over-delivered.
Thank you so much. You're awesome.
Thank you very much.
And we love you.
We love you back. Okay.
All right, guys, if you have questions about your brand or want to learn more, head to discussyourbrand.com and schedule a free session with our team and just learn what it's going to take to get you to the level of Ron Greenbaum one day.
Hey, I'm still aspiring myself. And folks, it's all about prosperity. And when we say prosperity, we're not just talking about money. We're talking about the 360 of an abundant life, which we want for every one of you. We know here at BrandFace that prosperity favors the bold. So we say be bold, folks, especially with your brand, just like Ron is and just like Ron's taught us. And Ron, thank you as always. It's always, there's wisdom in the gray hairs.
Yeah, you're getting there.
All right, guys, we'll see you next time on Be Bold Branding.